Right. Now I get to get from behind that pedestal because I don't know how to stand behind those things and talk. They kind of freak me out. I'm Italian, and if I don't use my hands, I feel like I'm dying when I'm trying to talk. So, you guys have gotten a lot of really good information today. There's been a lot of great questions, and that's the part that I love about it, is we talk about trying to bring in developers, trying to bring in new partners for SDL. The whole point of this innovation that we try to push, and I mentioned this before, and I'm gonna keep reiterating it, is you've seen the AppLink team and the Livio team, and we've got some amazingly talented people, but they're all working hard, they're all doing a lot to try to get this stuff off the ground. They're all doing a lot to make sure that SDL survives and to make sure that AppLink is a good product built off of that. But we always need help doing that. One of the greatest things that has been attributed to Henry Ford is the fact that he's been known as one of the greatest innovators ever in the history. And Henry Ford actually didn't do a lot of this stuff. He did a lot of this stuff on his own, but he was also smart enough to know that he needed other people around him. There's a lot of different really cool pictures that we've got in our building. We call it, well, it is called Building 5. It's an electrical engineering building, and it is very old. We had some wonderful conversations about that earlier. There's these pictures of Henry Ford with President Harding, with Thomas Edison, with the Firestone brothers. These were people that hung out together. They didn't go to a meeting and they were taking, there was a picture of them all standing around in their suits. They would go camping together. They would sit around a bonfire together. They would sit and drink wine that one of them had made. And they were friends and they hung out together, and they brought that innovation in from each of their own specialties. I mean, some of the most, it's just mind-boggling to me to see some of these pictures of these people that you've read about in history and people that you've studied and you look up to as what the things that they've done, and they were all hanging out together. So that's what we've kind of tried to do is to keep that vibe going, to keep that innovation going by surrounding ourselves with smart people. Now, when they went camping, they brought like 27 Winnebagos full of servants and their tablecloths, and their tents were like 34 by 50, but they called it camping, so we got to give it to them. It's just cool that they were there and they were together and they were embracing it, and Henry Ford embraced that. And that's why we launched this developer program in 2013, and that's why AppLink and SDL are very important to us. So I want to thank you for participating. I want to thank you for the good questions, and I'm looking forward to seeing some of the different things that come out of the hackathon tonight as well. We will be having an online recap. When you check out the developer site, give us a little while to edit and make sure that everything looks good. All of the presentations from today are going to be available. As Timur said, you can get them today if you want to grab a USB and download them quickly. If you don't have time today, we will also make them available on the developer site. We'll have a nice recap and show you all of the sessions, and all of the PowerPoints and presentations will be available as well. So we're getting closer to the end. You guys have been listening to all of this really intelligent stuff, so now you got me. We're going to slow things down. We've been looking forward for a long time. We're always pushing things forward. I kind of, if you look in your agenda, I was going to throw some of these in, but we had a really good roll going on. And so now we're going to kind of talk about where we got into this and how we got into this and why it's important to have developers with us and teaming with us, and why SDL is, as a platform in the automotive industry, is important to OEMs, but also important to developers. So I've got a couple of different presentations. I'm going to do them back to back. You'll get sick of me. You'll start throwing bananas and stuff. It'll be great. We'll all have a good time. So my background is not automotive. I've been with Ford for 4.5 years now. We've done some really cool things, hopefully that you've seen some glimpses of today. But prior to that, I was in the mobile industry. I spent 10 years building the habits of how people were using mobile phones. When I got into mobile, it was bag phones and beepers. There's some people out here who don't know what the hell a bag phone is because you are way too young. But bag phones and beepers were all that there were. You could decide if you wanted to carry around a piece of luggage and make a phone call for $1.99 a minute, or you could have something small that would buzz on your belt that you could look at and go, oh, that's very nice, but you couldn't call anybody back on it. So I spent 10 years launching retail systems in the Midwest for Verizon and T-Mobile and Sprint. And then I got into mobile content. And in 2004, 2005, mobile content was a completely different world. And there's been a lot of things that have come along that I've been a part of launching and creating these habits that users today find as something that, well, it must have always been there. So what I'm going to do is kind of walk through some of that and kind of tie it to what we're doing here and why we're doing it in the automotive industry. And, I was thinking about, what do we call it? And a lot of the things that would happen in the retail side of mobile is you would have people that would literally walk up to you and say, do I need a phone or do I need a pager? And your answer is, well, do you want to call somebody? Why did you have to ask me that question? Do I need a Bluetooth headset? Well, do you want to hold the phone up to your head or do you not want to? These were the questions because none of this stuff had been seen before. And as you start walking through the history of things and where they came from, the same thing is happening in automotive today. So when you start going back, way back to the 1900s, when we're talking about the 1990s, back before this brand new millennium, people would ask, why would I want to type on my phone? Why would I want to hit that key a whole bunch of times to make a letter? I've got to do what? How many times do I have to keep doing this? And how many times do I have to go back? Where is a period, by the way? And how do I make a space? This was how texting got started. And how much does it cost? When texting came out, you could buy different packages. So why would I want to buy a package for $9.99 a month on top of my $80 or $90 a month that I'm paying for my voice plan, which, by the way, they weren't called voice plans, they were just called plans, because everything was voice. Why would I pay $5.99 to have 500 texts? And if you are old enough to remember, you got a text in for free, but it costs you to text somebody back. So it's kind of like a pager in a way. So you don't want to tap that button a whole bunch of times? Fine. Here's a full QWERTY keyboard. Shove that sucker in your pocket. Nokia was on the cutting edge of a lot of things back in the day. They were ahead of their time, and unfortunately now they've fallen behind the time. But the idea of a full QWERTY keyboard on a telephone, hard T, sorry about that. The full idea of a full QWERTY keyboard on a telephone was crazy talk. In 1997, there was nobody that said, yes, this is what I want to carry. This looks like a satellite phone to people. It looks like a satellite phone nowadays. But how did I ever live without it? This is what happens when you start to introduce features, when you start to introduce products that people don't understand in the beginning. Now you're looking at 97% of all smartphone users in the US sending a text. The latest numbers for an entire year, 2014, 8.5 billion texts a day. So you throw in OTTs like WhatsApp or any of the other the SMS, or excuse me, IM systems. In less than 20 years, we went from why the hell would I do that to I can't live without this. This is how I operate. As a matter of fact, the way that it has actually rolled out is when it was a phone, you never wanted to type on it. You never wanted to touch it and text on it. Today, talking on it is probably what you do the absolute least. So it rolled in, and that was all part of the introduction of these features as to, well, why would I want to do that? When somebody walked in, why would I, it's a phone, why would I want to do this kind of stuff? Why would I want to take a picture with my phone? I've got a camera. I carry my camera everywhere with me in this nice little zip-up pouch, as a matter of fact, and I pull it out and I point it and I aim and I take a picture. And then I send it off someplace else and it gets developed, and then 3 weeks later I've got all of these pictures that I just put into a folder and stick them in a closet and never look at them again. When camera phones first came out, you had to put an attachment on it. You had to buy a separate attachment, which this one, by the way, for the Sony Ericsson, cost $118, just for the camera adapter. So you took that camera adapter and you shoved it into the phone, and then you took a grainy yellow picture, and then you showed all your friends on your camera, on your phone. And everybody said, well, why do you do that? Why would you ever want to do that? You've got a camera. So then they said, okay, great. Samsung came out with an amazing phone that had a camera built into it. Now the camera is right there. It's in it. And actually this one, you could spin and take video as well. So you're getting way ahead of yourself here. Why do I want to take pictures? I don't understand why I want to do this. But now it's, how did I ever live without it? We talk about technology and how the technology itself, the hardware, the cameras, all of these things have evolved. But it started with a bunch of people at the mobile operators who said, we have something cool here, and we need to get it out in the public. And a whole bunch of people said, well, why would they want to do that? Before the consumers ever said, why do I want to do it? People inside the operators were saying, well, why would they ever want to do that? But you had to do that. You had to introduce these features. You had to introduce these products. And we're seeing that same thing, right? We're seeing that's what we're talking about in connected car. So today, you look at a camera phone, you look at a phone, a mobile device, you're in the 20s of megapixels. You've got front cameras and rear cameras. You can do video. You can do 4K video. You can do slow motion video on your mobile device today. And you can get one from anywhere to $600 to $900. DSLR cameras can do the same thing. They're way bigger than your mobile device is. You can't play Angry Birds on it. You can't make a phone call on it. You can download 1 or 2 apps nowadays, but you're looking at $2,000. So the why would I do this not only changed the perception of how consumers used it, they also changed the hardware world around them. A mobile device grew faster, got better than the camera manufacturers did. Sound familiar in the automotive industry? We hear that a lot these days, how there's people that are outpacing the automotive industry and how fast we can put something together and how fast we can make something work. This one's the best. Please tell me everybody, or somebody knows what that is. Snake. That is what a mobile game was. In 1999 to 2001, that was a mobile game. Did you know how to play it? Hell no. You just push buttons until something happened. And sometimes it went this way, and sometimes it went that way, and sometimes it just disintegrated. But it was on your Nokia phone. And unless you were a super geek like me that wanted to do all this cool stuff, you said, why in the world would I ever want to play a game on my phone? Look at this screen. I mean, look at the screen. That's not conducive to playing a game. But we had to develop that. We had to get that out there. So then, because we did that, and because our developers helped us do that at the operators, things started to get a little bit better. And Bejeweled came out, and Diner Dash came out, South Park came out. One of the most successful applications that I dealt with in my previous life was simply Sudoku, USA Sudoku. It made $1 million as a mobile app. This was before before Apple iPhone existed. So yes, Virginia, there were apps before Apple. Why would I want to do this? Look at where we're at today. US revenue for gaming is estimated to be at $3.3 billion in the US this year. All because Snake existed. All because Bejeweled came through. Developers like PopCap came in and said, hey, we can actually work in this medium. If you were around back in the Brew and the J2ME days, Game had to be 900K or less. You had some serious restrictions on what you were able to do. But how did I ever live without it? Developers today, right? We've got developers in the room. I'm sorry to say that a lot of developers, the majority of developers, and you can read any kind of reports on this, the majority of developers aren't making $1 million a year on a mobile application. Before iTunes, before the Apple Store, there were a lot of developers making a full living on mobile apps. And that's where the mobile app economy has come from today. So the next step, and I know I'm starting to get redundant here, but yeah, what the hell is that? It's a WAP. What is a WAP? Really? You want me to do internet on my phone now? Dude, you were just talking about text messaging and cameras and stuff. Now you want me to get on the internet. Now you want me to do emails on my phone. And you know, this is how good this is. I mean, this guy's already doing like Tinder or something at 13. Put me on MSN. May of 2015, more search took place on a mobile device than on a computer for the first time ever, according to Google. But without WAP browsers, without making an extra cost even, right? We talk about being cost sensitive. You know, there was a discussion about navigation in a vehicle, and you know, and that's an added cost. Without navigation in a vehicle, you don't get to mobile navigation, and you don't get to the ability to have that in your vehicle with you. So it's pioneering these things, it's being innovative with these things that actually makes this happen. And again, here's another good one. The BlackBerry. When BlackBerry launched, and they were actually blue, people asked, what am I supposed to do with this thing? My company's not going to let me work on this. I'm not going to be able to get my corporate email. Well, you can if you buy an enterprise server. That's an extra cost, by the way. So now we're introducing cost again. But we're making this thing available, but nobody's understanding why. But people start to use it. Now they're asking, how did I ever live without it? Productivity goes up when people have mobile enterprise apps. Enterprise goes up with just the ability to have enterprise mobile devices. So by introducing that, we said, hey, this is something that people are going to need and going to want. But they didn't know it at the time. So now we're here. We've finally gotten out of history. We've almost gotten out of history. We've got the 2 line right here. We're getting closer to today. I know you guys can feel that we're getting closer to today. So why would I ever want to do this in a car? Why would I want to get messages in a car? Why would I want to get the weather delivered to me in the car? Why would I want to hear a Facebook update in a car? Why would I want to integrate my mobile device, which used to be a phone, in a car? Well, why wouldn't you? Here's why. Everything that I was just talking about started someplace. And it started, for lack of a more political term, with a pain in the ass. And it was. Because everybody asked, why would I want this? And why would I do this? And now people can't live without it. You've got to start someplace. And when you start someplace, you can start forging that road. You can actually start the direction, leading on who's going to be able to do what. So today, when we look at what's going on in the vehicle, we are at that why would I want to do that stage. You look at the vehicles here and what it's talking about for integration points. And we thank our friends at IHS for being partial to AppLink and including us. So see, it's not just us talking about it. We've got some friends out there as well. But now you start to look at 2 short years away to 4 short years away. And in the automotive world, that is the blink of an eye. I know in the mobile world, that's 3 lifetimes. But in the automotive world, that's the blink of an eye. So when we say, why would I want to do this? Today is the day. Today is 0. Today is the day when people are asking, why would I want to type on a phone? Why would I want to have a WAP browser? That's where the vehicle is. And what's nice about what you're seeing today and what you guys have been participating in is it's not just Ford that's doing this. We're trying to lead, and we've wonderfully now got some friends such as Toyota and others in the SDL group. But you're privy to this, and as developers, you've got the opportunity to be at the ground floor. You've got the opportunity to say, remember when people asked, why would I do this in the vehicle? I helped push that into, there's 140 million vehicles being sold that way. There's 160 million vehicles being sold with that capability. That's where it's exciting. That's why we do hackathons. That's why we invite everybody here. It is today when it is starting. There's different groups that I speak with, that I interact with, developers and different groups around the world that ask what's going to happen in the future and when is it going to come. Everybody can prognosticate. But if you get in today, if you start working on it today, then you can decide when that happens. The vehicles are going to have this stuff in them. They're going to have the capabilities in them. It's about what innovative developers can bring in to fit into that hardware and help push it along. Maybe someday this will be talking about space exploration and how did we ever, or why are we going to be doing this in a plane? Why are we going to be doing this in a shuttle? And everybody will forget days like today, this entire time when people say, why did they do that in a car? And everybody say, well, we've just always done it in a car. Why would we not? How did we live without this in a car? But you guys are going to be there to help get us to that point. More information about what's going to be happening. So many cars today, 20% going to have connectivity solutions. By 2025, every car. So again, we're prognosticating again. We're looking forward again. Based on who you're asking, they'll tell you all kinds of different things. Here's one I don't even know what it means. Here's one that's talking about all the people that are going to buy them. Here's one with a lot of pretty colors. And this one's all text. Nobody reads text. Come on. Here's more information. So basically what I'm trying to say here is everybody is starting to talk about this. The why would I do it now is today. And you guys have an opportunity to get in here. Because according to this one, it's going to be almost 30% collective growth. Anybody want to read that one for me? Because I don't follow them. I just try to get in and do cool stuff, and that's why I want to invite all of you guys to do cool stuff with us. And what does that mean for us? And what does that mean for you? It means that this is the gateway. We can talk about modems, we can talk about SDNs, we can talk about all of these things, but the fact that you've got this thing in your pocket, and I've got one in my pocket, and it never gets any further away than this, because when I set it there, I actually start to sweat when I walk this far away from it. You've got the opportunity now to get in there. You've got the opportunity to mold this. So where we came from in the entire mobile industry and where we came from as a society globally is where we are in the vehicle today. So where we're going to go is a really, really cool place. And so we're happy to have you guys here. We're excited that you're here, and we want to do some cool stuff with you. So thank you. So since I'm just going to stand up here until somebody throws me off. I'm going to break into another one, and this one's going to be a little bit different, but along the same lines. And nobody's used these chairs yet, so I'm sitting down. Does anybody know who said that? So Winston Churchill gets wrongly credited with his saying about those who neglect the past are condemned to repeat it. This is actually what he said, his words. And he said it in the House of Commons in 1941. And it's a very, very, very strong message when you look at why he said it. And he said it because at the time, England and France, and I believe there was one other country involved, and excuse me for forgetting, said that they wanted to then neglect Germany, and that they could beat Germany by pretending that they weren't there. And basically what Churchill said was, what he's attributed to, if you know about something and you don't react to it, and you don't do something about it, you're doomed to make the same mistakes that happened during that. And it's a very serious thing. And what I'm going to talk about, I do take serious, but nothing is as serious as war, and I just want to put that out there. But we are learning from history that happened before us. So I gave you some history just now on some of the things that have happened. Those were the cool and fun things in the history of the mobile world that have happened. There's some other things that have happened throughout the ages that we as an industry, as an automotive industry, really need to learn from and really need to take heed of. So in 2000, here's this one again. Way to go, Scott, you forgot your own slides. We're talking about all the money everybody's going to make, all the things that are going to be sold. And one thing that I didn't mention in the other one to save for this one is look at the other two names that show up in 2020 and 2022. So Apple and Android are going to come in, and they're going to have more stuff in more cars than any of the incumbent OEMs, is what IHS is telling us. So we've been making cars, and we've been doing this for 113 years, 114 years now, and they think that Apple and Google can do some of this stuff better in our cars. I'm not going to argue with that sometimes. Some days I think anybody can do it better than I can do it. But let's again take a look back and let's learn from history. In 2003, Steve Jobs did one of these and walked back and forth, and he launched iTunes. iTunes was actually meant originally to be a product sold to the Warner Music Group. It was not an Apple product. They worked with Warner. They said, this is something really cool that we can do. Obviously, we've got this thing called an iPod, and it plays digital music, and there are some other lesser known machines that play digital music. We want to help you transition from vinyl and CD to digital music, and they work together. Something happened along the way. I wasn't there, I don't know. I just only know anecdotally that Warner said, no, we don't think that this is really gonna happen. And Steve Jobs said, yeah, you guys are idiots. Can I have it? And they went, well, yeah, sure, whatever. You wanna put this on your little iPod with a little circle thing? Yeah, go right ahead, man, go do that. So iTunes was launched. It was launched with 200,000 tracks in it when it launched in 2003. And all 5 of the major labels who were in existence at the time put music in there. Over the next 6 years, over the next 10 years, but basically between 2003 and 2009, iPods contributed on average about 40% of the net revenue that Apple made every single quarter and every single year that they reported out to their stockholders. And if you've paid attention to stocks over the last 15, 20 years, Apple's done okay. They've done all right in the stock game. You know, they're good kids. They did all right. But iPod was the main reason for that for a very long time. A very long time. Anybody want to guess what the reason was in 2008 when it wasn't the main reason anymore? iPhone. But until the iPhone came out, this was their bread and butter. And they were selling millions and millions and millions and millions of tracks that people were downloading, originally DRM protected, so it only worked on an iPod, by the way, and Apple stock soared. They were making 20, 30, $40 million a year in revenue, or a quarter in revenue after that, but at this point it was a year in revenue. And during that same amount of time, the major labels saw the music industry fall off the edge of a cliff. In 2008, as a matter of fact, Sony and BMG and Universal worked on 3 different programs simultaneously to try to figure out how to beat Apple and how to gain that market share back. Because they went from selling CDs for $15 or $19.99 a piece to selling one track for 99 cents, of which they got 70 cents, by the way. And then, of course, they paid the artist basically nothing. That's a different conversation. But what we're talking about here is the fact that they dove, and then this comment made by our friend Warner Ames as to what they saw happen. And they didn't work together. So you had 5 majors. There was 6 just before this, but we had 5 majors. 2003. 2012, there were 3 majors left. So the inability to address the situation, believe the situation, and work together to rectify the situation, EMI had to split both of their lines of music, and BMG got sucked up by Universal. And then this happened. And then once this happened, this happened. What are they taking pictures of anyways? I don't know. I've never understood this. And you can sell 5 of them at a time too, 5 different versions. And then whatever that is isn't that the dude from Silicon Valley? He seems really excited about an iPhone for some reason. And she's just kind of scaring me. So this is what changed everything. This is what took it and said, goodbye iPod, we got something better. But before this ever happened, now I'm going on the Wayback Machine again. Anybody know what that was called? That is the Motorola Rocker. That was the very first mobile device, mobile phone, ever sold that was iTunes compatible. Woohoo! You can get iTunes on our phone. This was 2005. People went, you're an idiot. You can't have iTunes on your phone. It's a phone. It's for, why would I ever want that, right? Let's just take a step back. Why would I ever want that? Well, let's again deep dive this a little bit, and let's take a look at what happened. You had Apple, who was making a ton of money selling iPods, and you had Motorola, who had the best-made devices, most popular device on the face of the planet at the time, the Razr, which of course everybody had, right? And then you were double tapping to text at that time, weren't you? Yes. Why would I ever? You guys were doing it. But they launched it on a candy bar style. And again, if you are not that old, candy bar it looks like this, as opposed to the nice slim Razr. So they didn't launch it on the popular Motorola phone that people would use and people would want and people would like. They did it on the one that they said, well, no, that's the one you give to your kids. We don't want to put it on that. You couldn't access the iTunes store on the device. Isn't that kind of the staple of iTunes? Isn't that the whole point of it? The only way to get music onto your device was to sideload it. You had to be connected to your laptop or your PC, or again, it's 2005. The computer was probably this big, and you had to jack into it, and then you could go to iTunes Store, and then you could buy your 99-cent track that Universal got 70 cents for. Oh, also, when you do that by the side, when you go to USB and you hook up, because you can't go to iTunes, you can put a whopping 100 songs on your Motorola Rocker. So there's your playlist for the rest of your life. Doesn't matter how much memory you have on your phone, you can put 100 songs on your device. Or you can go back to your den and you can sideload and you can change your 100 songs if you want to. Ironically, the iPod Nano launched the same exact day in the same exact speech as the Motorola Rocker. And it launched with the capacity for 1,000 songs. Motorola Rocker had plenty of room for 1,000 songs, just putting that out there. And then when you start getting into the conspiracy theories, you can also look at the fact that this company who makes sure that design is number one, and this company that makes sure that their name is the only one you see, did not brand on the phone itself. It didn't have an Apple logo, it didn't have an iPod logo on it anywhere. And if you are a Steve Jobs fanboy, as I know some people that I know in this room are, and you've probably watched every single announcement that he's done for the new products, or if you watch the movie Jobs, you understand that he was calculatedly rehearsed. Everything was perfect, everything. From the steps that he took, I have no clue where I'm stepping. I make sure I just don't fall off. Everything that he did was exact, and he went through it painstakingly, and that was his design. He made a phone call while he was listening to music and was going to go back to the music. He messed it up. Oh, well, I must have pushed the wrong button. Tee-hee. He didn't come out and gush over it. He said, yeah, it's pretty cool. So we look at that, and between 2007 and 2016, Apple sold 1 billion iPhones. They launched in 2007. They cut their teeth. They learned an awful lot of stuff about how do you work with a mobile operator? How do you get into Singular? How do you deal with them? What is carrier billing? Oh, carrier billing means that the operator is going to take a cut? Well, how about if we just sideload for now instead? And then when they came back and said, we're going to come off with this really cool mobile device, there was no mobile billing, there was no operator billing. You had to go straight to the iTunes Store. Oh, and if you wanted to get something from them, they took a cut. So the unfortunate part is that in that same amount of time, Motorola was sold twice. Lenovo announced that beginning next year, the Motorola name will no longer show up on devices. I'm not saying there's a one-to-one correlation there. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm just noting the dichotomy between the two companies with the fact that Apple went in and Apple learned, and then Apple did it better. And they're not alone. Remember, there was two names in there. There was Apple, and then there was Android. Android is, of course, Google. The Open Handset Alliance. If you're not familiar with the Open Handset Alliance, it was started as an open consortium. Sounds familiar, it's something we've been talking about here. And in this open consortium, Google invited everybody to contribute, everybody to participate, from mobile operators, especially obviously handset device makers, developers like yourselves. Everybody can come in. They want everybody to be able to contribute. Everybody is going to be successful on it. So here's what they planned. Google creates the operating system. You contribute. You join the OHA. Devices put Android on their hardware, and then they ship them out. Developers build cool apps. All of my friends get to do cool stuff. We get apps, we have a great OS. We just got the iPhone killer, guys. We did something great. Problem is, they've had things very, very open. And by Q1 of 2014, there were 18,000, pick a number, 300, 18,500. There was over 18,000 versions of Android around the globe. So you've got to rein that in. Fragmentation kills. You look at the different breakdowns of the different platforms of Android. They're all over the place. Just in the last version, the last 5.0 version and 5.1 version. And now you're starting to get into 6. And now we're getting into Nougat. Nougat was launched, was that today, yesterday? You're increasing the fragmentation. How do you stop this? It's killing you. And why is it happening? Well, it's happening because you have a device manufacturer who's a part of the consortium, and then they make their own custom UI, right? We've got to make it our own. And then they put their own apps in there. And then they send it off to the mobile operators. Well, the mobile operators say, you know, we've got our own apps too. Oh, and now we've got to test all of this. So you've got this circle going around, and there's a whole lot of pieces of the pie. And when there's a whole lot of pieces of the pie looks like it's split into a bunch of pieces. This is what was causing fragmentation on Android. So what's Google going to do? Or, I mean, what's Android going to do? No, what's Google going to do? Because Google has the biggest horse in this race. They're competing against Apple. So what they'd said is, we're going to go off and we're going to make our own apps. Android is an open platform. Our apps are ours. You bozos can't touch them on the device side. We'll let you hook into them, though. We'll create some APIs, and you guys can hook into all of our stuff. It'll be great. You'll love it. We'll call it Google Play Services. How's that? Oh, by the way, Google Play Services, we're going to call it an app. It is technically an app. It has permissions at the OS layer because, well, it's Google. They made it. Oh, and by the way, we control all of those connections back and forth. And if you want your stuff to work, you're going to have to do it our way now. So how do device manufacturers fight against something like that? Well, you can go out and make your own. You can make your own version of any app that exists in the world. And here's what Samsung has done to try to do that. They've tried to combat that. They've tried to fight that. Most of those people probably either delete or disable. It's called bloatware in the industry. You don't have to do that. It is open source. You can forego the OHA. You can go off and make your own entire fork, do anything you want with it. And that's what they call it. You're not going to see any of the Google Play services on any of the Kindle devices. You're not going to see any Google Play services in China. The big issue for somebody like Amazon is it's a great idea. You've got control over everything. But if the device manufacturer is in the OHA, they can't make a device for you, Mr. Amazon. That's what the OHA means, is that they can't make a device that runs Android approved by the OHA and runs a fork of Android not approved by the OHA. They are not allowed to. We make hardware. We make really big hardware. And it goes really fast and it looks really cool sitting there. But the hardware that we make, you have for 7, 10, 11 years. You don't like a Samsung device, go get a different device. Go get an LG. You don't like an LG, go get a Kindle. You get sick of a Kindle, you're probably going to hop over to an iPhone and give that a shot. We don't have that luxury. The automotive industry doesn't have. All right, so now we've got this. The Open Automotive Alliance. I'm not going to bore you with what could happen there. I think from what we just talked about, you understand what could happen there. I am not, this is not a detriment about Apple or Google. I have no issues with how they've worked in the business, none whatsoever. Owning a vertical is perfectly logical to me. No ill feelings against them whatsoever. What I'm talking about today and why we're here and why this is important is because we can't let this happen to us as Ford, to the automotive industry as a whole, to basically where we work. I want to keep my job. I enjoy my job, talking to developers and hanging out with developers. So in order to do that, we have one answer as an industry, and that is what SDL is. SDL is the way for us to combat what we've seen in other areas and what has happened, and we can learn from history this way and not repeat our mistakes. So with that, I am going to invite up a special guest to do some closing remarks, who is here someplace. I'll take some questions, sure. Unless you're going to ask me a question I don't know the answer to, because then I'll just tap dance.
Yeah, I was just curious your take on how this fits in with the whole autonomous thing coming up in the next 4 or 5 years.
Actually, to be perfectly honest, we don't tie the two together. Connectivity and autonomy will be meshed together. I'm sorry, the answer was how do we connect this with autonomy? Autonomous is something that's going on. It's very real, but it's a completely separate item from getting your entertainment, from connecting to the vehicle. In one day, if we have a fully autonomous vehicle, it can just be a pipe. Everything can be beamed in. Think about the great 360 experience you could have in a vehicle if all of your windows were screens. But what we talk about here doesn't really tie directly to autonomy. That's a component of all connectivity and certainly will be. But what we're talking about here is the ability to bring everyday content today into vehicles.
So the only reason I asked that was Ford, I think, sent a press release out that by 2021, all their vehicles will be autonomous, no steering, no brakes. And so when you do that, you basically make the hardware a commodity, right? If you cannot control it, it doesn't matter if you're a Mustang or a Focus, or you know what I mean? It takes out the differentiator. So at that point, the software becomes, the experience becomes, the pervasive thing. So that's why I was curious about your thoughts on it.
Yeah, and the question was, we've definitely made announcements about our autonomous vehicles. I don't believe it was every vehicle will be autonomous by 21, though. Otherwise, we've got a lot of engineers that are going to be out of jobs. Yeah, but the question about autonomy, the software being the differentiator. But software itself doesn't have to be the differentiator, and that's kind of what SDL does, is it allows OEMs to compete on marketing, on content, on other areas. Because the technology to get it in, one of the reasons that SDL was born was because we realized we didn't give scale to developers and we didn't give scale to owners. So it's better for us to survive if we don't try to compete at that particular level. Anybody else with a good question? Yes, sir. Charge people. So the question was, as a third-party company, how do you monetize? This is not tap dancing around it, but honestly, I think we try to provide the tools and the resources, and then we hope that the third parties will innovate to monetize. And what we do as Ford is we don't insert ourselves in there either. There are areas where we provide value, and we will be able to monetize ourselves along with our third-party partners. But in general, like if somebody has a subscription service or however you monetize, whatever your business model is, we don't insert ourselves. We just try to support. So we try to just give you as many tools as possible so that you can innovate and monetize how you would normally. I think if we set strict rules on how to monetize, we limit what we're going to get in return. I know it doesn't sound like a really straight answer, but it's flowery and it sounds good and it's truthful. Anybody else? Hey, Timur, could you do me a favor and see if our closing remarks guest is here? Because I did see him and he needs to get mic'd and get his ass up on the stage. How's that? Check outside. I saw him roaming around. He's got one job. Walk in, get a microphone on, you know?
So I think the question I have is how does SDL, the future of SDL, we saw the chart earlier about competition with Android Auto and Apple CarPlay. How do we see SDL as a differentiator, as well as it as a competitor, but in the same space, right? Because they're launching on the same platforms.
Sure. So the question was, how do I envision SDL as a competitor, and how do we keep a competitive edge with Apple and Google encroaching in the car? Is that accurate, or at least with my own spin on it? So the answer to that is we differentiate by being the OEM, I guess is the way to look at it. So Apple and Google can do stuff in the car. We don't allow them, like that wonderful list of vehicle data that Timur showed and that Scott and Joey showed that we can make available. You can't get that through Apple or Google. We've got that ability. We believe that the vehicle data is owned by the owner, the vehicle owner. So we take it very important to police that. So we can police that by saying, here's who can get access to it, because as we've vetted this developer, and then you as the owner can say yes or no to that developer getting access to it. So the ability to access that vehicle data is a huge differentiator. The ability to control that HMI, to allow developers the ability to work within those templates and to keep creating templates so that developers also maintain their branding. You know, we obviously create the template because we understand the NHTSA guidelines as to what you have to do for distracted driver. But we want you to brand within there, and we work with our developers, and the templates are growing and growing and growing. Whereas if you look at one of those third-party solutions, you're stuck with what they want to show, which is their branding. And then I think a third piece, there was a really nice article written by some friends of ours at Detroit Labs that talked about the fact that even if you're a fanboy, there are certain places you don't want that UI to show up. If you're an iPhone, if you're an iOS fan, that's great. If you're an Android fan, obviously there's the different types of UI. But you know, that's maybe that's why Apple TV hasn't picked up, because you don't want that UI on that device. And I think that's kind of similar to how when you purchase a vehicle, you're looking at that display and you like that display and there's things about it, and then you can brand an app in there. But then that kind of gets thrown away when you take this third-party solution and you're at their beck and call, and why you bought this $60,000 or $70,000 or $100,000 vehicle and all of the cool things just changed because of your $400 device. And not everybody wants that. So I think that's another way where we're going to be able to keep that differentiation and that lead. Way in the back. One more, and then I've got to get somebody up here. We can try to find you another Palm Pilot if you'd like, Derek. We'll get you a Trio, how's that? Or a Compact, an HP Compact. Anybody remember those things? Yes, sir. Last one.
So you guys have gotten beat up, us guys got beat up pretty bad on super reports, on the overall view of electronics in the car. And Ford's chosen to provide customers what customers are asking for. Are you guys going to stay the course?
Yes, sir. Okay, cool. Otherwise, I'm just going to be standing up here talking to nobody at that point. Yes, we definitely plan to stay the course and to fight the good fight as long as we can, as long as I can anyways. So thank you very much. We will now bring up a very special guest to do some closing remarks for you. He's a very entertaining gentleman, and he was actually part and parcel responsible with myself for all of this fun stuff that we've got behind us here. And today he is the founder and the managing partner and the president and the CEO, and he's everything to everybody, let's just say. So please welcome up to the stage Mr. John Ellis. I don't have any intro music for you, sorry. Yep. Right there.
Good afternoon, Vegas. I know there's not a lot of you, but good afternoon. Give me some love. Give me some love. All right. Most of you, I'm just looking in the audience, except for that very back table. A lot of you don't know who I am, so just let me know that. Let me tell you that I know I stand between you and alcohol. So I'm going to be really quick. But Scott asked me, I've been gone for 3 years, and he said, can you give us some closing reflections about what we're doing? This is the third developer conference, some stuff that's happening. I'm doing a lot of work, so he said, could you give us some closing comments? I said, I'd be happy to. But in order to give you all sort of an understanding of the filters and biases, I do want to take a second and just introduce who I am just really quickly. So I'm a developer. I have been developing for about 27 years. I started my career at Motorola. A couple different things happened at Motorola. Notwithstanding what you see here, I actually grew up in Mexico and I speak a couple of different languages. Spent about 3 years in China. So I started a training company in 1997 called Ellis & Associates to teach people about how to do business effectively overseas. But the two things that bring us to this stage today is way back, if you can think about it. When you bought a device, you got the software that came to you from the person who built that device. You didn't have a chance to modify it. Maybe there's some settings, but you didn't actually get to change it and make it your own. And Motorola was one of the first to actually bring forth a third-party developer program to actually change the mobile experience. Today, you now know them as the Apple Store, the Google Store, but back in the early 2000s, they were not in existence. Motorola was one of the first to bring it up. Developer for Motorola.com was, in fact, the property. In fact, it was one of the properties that Google did buy when they bought Motorola, and they kept it. But more importantly, when you bought that device, it had an OS on it that was closed, proprietary, and very, very deep, dark black magic. Motorola, again, broke that magic by opening up a Linux-based cell phone in 2004 as part of the engineering team that brought that to market. And so the idea from software and opening up was part and parcel of who I am and where I came from. After about 21 years, I left Motorola, was doing my own thing, hanging out, and Ford found me. And so Ford asked me to write them a software strategy paper on the connected car, which I did. They liked, and so then they hired me as the connected global technologist for the connected car business unit. And part of the things that I did there, Scott just mentioned it, we did this, the developer program, SDL, open sourcing, cloud-based stuff, a lot of different software. The tagline you saw earlier, it used to have a Ford logo on it. I'm not a car guy, I'm a software guy, and I work at Ford, much to the dismay of most of the car industry. Caused a lot of shock and awe and anger. Holy cow, how could you not be a car guy? I don't really care about the car. I cared more about the software in the car. After 3 years, I left. And I am now but on my own, but actually not on my own. There's 8 of us actually at work in Ellis & Associates. And we're global, and we focus on software and software strategy for companies trying to figure out how to make themselves connected in this world of unconnected software. Some of the examples there. So that's the bias and the filter. And that's who I am. Now, when I speak, I do a lot of speaking for some of those customers about the automotive industry and transportation. And just to level set, you all know it because that's why you're here. But these are the big numbers, right? There's some big numbers. 73 million vehicles were sold last year, roughly. On order, we're selling more and more. We're probably going to tap out at about 80 million here soon. But there's about 1.2 billion cars in the car park, and most of them, about 1.1 billion, have something called an OBD. They have a dongle. They have the ability to put data out there. And about $2 trillion is anticipated by 2020 in terms of all vehicle sales ever. It's a very big market. It's a very big, interesting opportunity. But here's some really cool things, right? Vehicle data has now been priced. There are companies out there estimating what it is in terms of vehicle data that's available in terms of cars, right? That's cool. But more importantly, this data is found in really interesting things, the sensors, the other things that drive and are part and parcel of that car. Now, little 2 data facts that you may not know. Number 1, on this slide, 99.99% of all drives in the US and Canada are what they call intent and purpose drives. That means you're in the car with a reason. You're going from point A to point B with a reason. Long gone are the days when you would be in a car because of wanting to just ride down Main Street. So intent and purpose. Why that's important is that if I can collect your intent and I know your purpose and I can put down data from the vehicle, it becomes an exceptionally rich opportunity for those people who know how to harvest it, manage it, and deliver it. Now, the other part of this is that we're intentionally mobile, right? When you get into a car, you're moving. You're moving from some place to another. You're spending only about 1.2 hours a day, and about 85% of that time you're by yourself. So about 1.2 hours a day, 85% of the time, you're by yourself, and 99.99% of the time, you're going for a reason from point A to point B. So a lot of people are copping onto this. The OEMs are copping onto it, Ford, Chrysler, GM, and others, and they're working out solutions to try and address that. You'll see massive amounts of changes. Sync Gen 3, for example, fantastic opportunities in trying to address that. However, they fall short. As compared against to the smartphone and phablets that we use each and every day, they fall short. And they know that they fall short, okay? So let's stop there, move on to a new data point. We're going to throw this story together. Many are interested in data. A lot of people are interested in data. When I show this slide, I have a couple other slides with a couple different other points. People are like shocked. Oh my gosh, there's nobody on there from the car business. No. Retailers want to see car data. The data they want may or may not be that interesting, but they want to know what you're doing, where you're at any given time. They want to be able to interact with you. So there's a lot of different people who want data, and they're getting it today by companies like this. Automatic, Metromile, Zuby, Mojio, et cetera, i.e. the dongles that you stick underneath there. So we have an identified market. We have an identified need. We have identified people doing things to get data. Absolutely clear for us. Now, at this point in time right now, you may be very bored. Drinks are coming. But I want to set you up to be paranoid. Something that you may never have thought about. What is your internet data traffic worth? How much are you worth to people like Google? So here's the exercise. You all can do it. This is for a colleague of mine named Kevin. So Kevin had a machine in 2013 that we were using as part of building up some work that we were doing. And we took the machine and we measured something called internet traffic in his cache. We did it by a company called privacyfix.com. They're down on the right-hand side, you can see. So they give you a plugin that you can put in and take a look at your cache. And we did. And the report comes back, and it does a nice iconographic view of all the sites you visited, of all the brands you visited. Really kind of cool. But it doesn't stop there. It takes those sites, it takes that information, it passes it off to a company in Boston called Trephis.com. Trephis.com is a lot like Morningstar. They track the value of the AdWords in the AdWord economy from Google. And they estimate on any given day at any given time what a word traded for in the AdWord economy. And so for my colleague Kevin, who had 3 months of history in the August of 2013 timeframe, he was worth about $565 of hard cold cash paid for by the brands on your right to Google on the left. $565 for a 3-month period of time. But again, it didn't stop there. These sites also looked at something with respect to Google Analytics. So for those of you that may or may not know it, Google Analytics, think back, webmasters, a web server. Google Analytics is a package from Google that allows for you to be able to look at your site and do the analytics. Where did someone come from? How long were they there? How long were they stay? What were they looking for? What did they do when they were on your site? Very impressive, very cool. Here's something interesting. What most people don't realize in the terms of service is whatever you see, they see. So 25% of the brands that Kevin visited in this 3-month period, in addition to paying $565, also gave all the data about his visits to their sites, to Google. But like the Ginsu knife commercial in the United States, it doesn't stop there. All these sites, 94% of them actually use the Facebook like button, i.e. thumb up, thumb down. Let us know what you think about what we're doing here. And again, like the Google opportunity, Facebook has a term of service that says, if you include this little snippet of Java code to put a little thumb up or thumb down, we, Facebook, get the data as well. So 94% of the sites on the far right were sending data to Google, to Facebook, as well as paying dollars for my colleague Kevin's 3-month of experience online. Now, what's really interesting to note is this was one machine. He has other machines at home. His wife has a machine. He has a phone. His wife has a phone. His kids have tablets. His kids have devices. They're all in on the Android ecosystem, a number of devices. So we ran this study again for a client of ours at the very end of 2015. So here we go. Midwestern family, family of 4. Certainly not in the 1%, but they're a well-to-do, middle-class family. 2 kids, 12, 10. So a boy and a girl, husband and wife, outside of Chicago, Illinois. For the year 2015, the value that he and his family in Android represented to Google is $5,500 US in actual cash and cash equivalents paid by the brands that he and his family visited over the year 2015. That is an awful lot of money. And because of that, it is now no wonder that Apple and Google are coming into automotive. We know why they're coming now. We actually know why they're coming. Now, we're here talking about SDL. You're here looking at how SDL works. And guess what? SDL is, in fact, the genesis behind Apple's CarPlay and Android Auto. Now, a lot of people, when I talk, don't know what Android Auto or Apple CarPlay is. So I show them this little slide. Today, there are over 25 connected car solutions. Every company's got one. Everyone's got one because guess what? Everyone else is doing it. And they're cool, and they're branded, and they're wonderful, and they spend a lot of time and money, and they allow them to brand themselves. And then all of a sudden, somebody comes along and says, like Apple, hey, we're going to solve that. That's too many. That's way too many people. Look at that. That's way too many UIs. I, Apple, know that I have got the best UI. Why? Because you're with your device 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, within 3 feet of you if you're over the age of 35. If you're under the age of 35, the device is within 1 foot of you. And if you're under the age of 18, it's with you. You know the UI intimately. So the two companies stand up and say, we're going to solve this UI problem. So again, they go back and they look at all the brands and they look at what's going on there and they look at them and they say, hey, that's really cool, that's really wonderful, but that really sucks. So we're going to fix it. And that's what they did. And they fixed it. And they fixed it by bringing their software into the vehicle at the invitation of the OEMs. Now, where this was dramatically brought to bear to people is in 2013 at the Geneva Auto Show in March is where CarPlay was introduced. And on the stage, there was a $28,000 Kia that had CarPlay in it. Does anyone want to know what the other car was that had CarPlay in it? It was the Porsche, a $110,000 car. And all the journalists said, oh, wow, look, the two Apple cars. So it is very, very dangerous with brands when you do brand mixing. Now, of note, Toyota has said no. Toyota has stepped up with Ford. Toyota said no, we're going to look at it. There are other reasons for that. So Toyota's out. But all the other major brands have announced it, and you're seeing them rolling today. But here's the issue. The OEMs that we've talked to believe that it is only Apple and Google. What they don't recognize, what they don't understand, is that it is not just Apple and Google. Apple and Google are the two strongest in the US, but they are not the only mobile ecosystems in the world. There are 7 other mobile ecosystems in the world. Dr. Richard Windsor studies them financially quarterly, the 7 of them. Now, the big ones are Baidu, 850 million. They just announced their own connected car program. They're the version of Google in China. Facebook, 1.7 billion. Mark Zuckerberg says with Oculus Rift and VR and AR, he's going after the car. He wants to change the driving experience inside the car. Yahoo, Amazon, Facebook, others. They're big and they are waiting. And as soon as Apple and Google demonstrate success and how they've done it with the OEMs, they're coming. And so we won't just have 2 + 1 UIs in a car. We will have 7, 8, or 9 + 1 in a car. That's the future. Now, what does that do to us? What happens? I've been talking about vehicle data. I've been talking about why Apple and Google are coming. So let's talk to you about what they really think they can accomplish with this vehicle data that's in a car and what that world might look like. And we call it the $0 car. So walk with me on this quick journey. This is a car today. This is a car that you can buy today. I've taken the branding off it. All those sensors are real, alive, and in there. There are some sensors removed, but for the purposes of this demonstration, they're all there, and you can buy them today. Now, when I show this like I said, for the last couple of years, I keep updating it. But when I show it, the automotive guys are very excited. Wow, look at how cool, and look at how far advanced we've come in terms of being able to deliver safety to the car. It's an amazing, amazing engineering effort, and it is. Yet, somebody like Google or Facebook comes along and looks at that and says, holy cow, look at the data sources. Look what I can do with that. So for example, let's take these 6. I can take these 6 items, collect them, put them together. I can look at the headlamp, the clock, the wiper. I can look at the barometer. I can look at things and I can say, wait a minute. Combined, those are some very accurate weather elements. In fact, they're so accurate that within a 10,000 square foot entity around that car, I have an accurate weather station. Oh, but let's look at these. These were decided for crash avoidance. But if I actually look at them and I know where you're at and I know what speed limit you should be going, I can actually access these sensors and understand why aren't you moving at the speed you should be doing. I can look at the cameras and understand what's happening. And then the infamous microphone. Hands on the wheel, eyes on the road, use your voice. An amazing safety advancement by the automotive engineers. Yet it's an interesting and insightful opportunity for companies who know how to access it to actually determine who you are. Are you a man? Are you a woman? Are you old? Are you young? Are you by yourself in the car? When you speak to the car, what are you asking it? What are you telling it? How might I glean information from it? So again, automotive perspective, safety. Everyone else's perspective, monetary opportunity. So how do they look to and what do they want to do with this? Here we go. Scenario 1 is going to be sensors at the dealer. So let me set some context, and then we'll move forward on what this is. So all those packages I just talked about, package 1, which was our weather, package 2, which was our traffic, and why weren't you moving as fast? Traffic, sensor 3 was your microphone. We keep going with that. I can sell that data. So imagine I sell that data. I sell, and somebody buys it from me. So I sell that data. Package 1, I sell for $6,000. Package 2 for $4,000. Package 3 for $7,000, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, until I have something on the order of $60,000 of value of data that I have sold to somebody. Now, who am I selling it to? Entities like this. NOAA, National Oceanic Atmospheric Association, or Administration, excuse me. What were they and what are they? Here in the US, they're the group that's responsible for determining weather and figuring out path of weather so they can understand impact to insurance. Hurricane Sandy occurred in the US a couple years ago. It was damaging, about $60 billion of impact economically to the US. They have said, had they had better weather, understanding, they could have reduced it to about $20 billion. They absolutely would be interested in buying the real weather data where people are traveling, as opposed to trying to have to put up weather stations in places where they're going to guess where people might be. Every DOT has a requirement to travel the roads that they are responsible for managing. It is a state requirement that's actually federally mandated in order to get the monies from the federal government. Every one of the DOTs that we've spoken to said, we would rather buy, if we could buy that data, then we know what roads you're actually traveling, as opposed to having to travel literally every road. We can literally take the data from the roads that you're traveling and focus our efforts on those roads. Similarly, all the insurances, you've all heard of UBI, don't have to go into that, but then there's brands. The brands are interested. They want to know. Again, you're in a car with an intent and purpose. You're going somewhere, and you might be by yourself. If I knew that, I could change your world. I could say within 2 minutes from here, I can have a Frappuccino ready for you to go.